Today, House Majority Leader Eric Cantor promised a House vote to fully repeal Obamacare Act in the near future. It would be the House's 37th vote to repeal the law since 2011. The right has been obsessed from the beginning with killing Obamacare, but are now seeing a new opportunity to try and kill a law that appears to have 9 lives at least. An article on The Hill today details Tea Party efforts to get their groove back as they gear up for 2014, this time planning to campaign not against Obamacare in the abstract, but to use Obamacare's rollout to catapult itself back to political power. Rather than harping on death panels that don't exist, Republicans are zeroing in on the anticipated logistical problems of implementing what is a fairly complicated and ambitious piece of legislation. And they've been fear-mongering to increasingly good effect, even managing to spook a number of Democrats, including Senator Max Baucus, whose comment that he sees a train wreck coming down if the health care law is not implemented correctly has been seamlessly integrated into the right's argument.
With the economy stagnant, if we implement Obamacare now, it will kill jobs.
They're still trying to figure out how to implement it.
You've definitely have a problem on your hands when the chief author of Obamacare himself has come out and said it's going to be a quote, train wreck to implement.
I urge my friends on the other side to join with Republicans and stop the train wreck. Stop this train wreck before things get even worse.
I love when Mitch McConnell gets passionate. Republicans have tried to kill the health care law at every possible step along the way, in the House, in Senate committee, on the Senate floor, with 36 repeal votes, by underfunding it, and by challenging it in the courts. But none of that has worked. So here's what they're trying to do now, and it's perhaps their most cynical move yet. Republicans around the country are engaged in a coordinated effort to make the implementation of Obamacare as much as a disaster as possible, so that in 2014 they can run against what a disaster it is. There are already 15 states with Republican governors who said they will not participate in the Medicaid expansion, and even more that are refusing to set up the exchanges. And that doesn't even include the legislators from state houses to the Capitol who are balking at appropriating the money it would take to make the law actually work. What is so absolutely craven about this, that while it may very well prove to be politically expedient strategy, what it means is intentionally wrecking the lives of millions of people. Over 5 million people will not get Medicaid coverage because states have opted out of the Medicaid expansion. And there are millions more who are quite possibly going to be caught in a poorly or half-implemented healthcare system by design. By the design of Republicans who are so maniacally focused on killing Obamacare, they don't care who gets killed, hurt as a result. Joining the table tonight, Avik Roy, Senior Fellow at the Manhattan Institute, former member of Mitt Romney Healthcare Policy Advisory Group, Dr. Valerie Arkush, Senior Policy Advisor of the National Physicians Alliance, and Richard Kim, Executive Editor for TheNation.com. All right, let's talk about the politics first. Avik, I'll start with you. Do you think are there any political costs to continued resistance to Obamacare as the kind of single plank of the Republican healthcare agenda?
If it's only a single plank, yeah, I think there needs to be a constructive alternative. But I'm not convinced, as some conservatives are, that repeal is going to be likely in 2017. I think that if you're going to invest all of your political capital only on repeal and not on the possibility that we will be stuck with this law that we don't like and what do we do to reform it or build on it, I think that's challenging. Having said so, by the midterm elections, there are going to be problems with the law. And so there will be issues of rising premiums, things like that people hope that they can run on and get elected to Congress on that basis.
There was this fascinating moment in the House, it was last week, I believe, in which the House was going to put forward a bill that was their first kind of incremental look at what Republican version of health reform would be. It had to do with catastrophic insurance, which is often what Republicans talk about as the first place to deal with this issue of the uninsured, right? And it got pulled at the last minute because Republicans basically didn't want to be voting for anything but repeal of Obamacare. What was your takeaway from that?
Well, just first to correct you, it was high-risk pools,
high-risk pools, sorry.
Catastrophic interest, which is meant to be a subsidized set of money for people who are uninsurable, who can't otherwise get insurance based on pre-existing conditions. And there was a debate. There was a minority in the Republican caucus that said, well, we don't want to fund anything that has to do with Obamacare, so we don't want to have anything to do with this shuffling money from one pot to another of a law that we oppose. But the people who are in favor had said, well, look, we support high-risk pools, so, why shouldn't we support this particular element of the law?
But they couldn't get it. They couldn't bring it to the floor because anything that's associated with Obamacare, right, has become so toxic that this is like, it's got the polarity effect of it, right? It's like the two North Pole magnets pushing this way.
I also think, though, I'm struck here at how sort of small and petty the sort of concerns about the implementation are. It really does boil down to a kind of like logistics question, and the whining is sort of about the forms are too long, or the bill is 2,000 pages, or the rules are too complicated to understand. Those are easily addressed. So electorally, I just wonder in 2014, is this sort of carping about logistics really going to drive the midterm elections the way that it did in 2010?
I mean, here's this latest fascinating Kaiser Family Foundation polling. 42% of Americans, listen to me, 42% of Americans are unaware that ACA is still law of the land. That's a shockingly high number. That's kind of like where did we end up on that whole Supreme Court thing? 58% of the uninsured, which is pretty striking, right? The people that the law is whose lives the law will most change and who it's most designed to benefit in many ways. A majority of the folks who are the beneficiaries of this law that was passed with tremendous political risk at great political cost don't know the law exists.
Here's the thing, though. I think both theories are true. There are going to be people who benefit from the law, and I think that constituency will be very active in opposing an effort to repeal the law. There will be people who are adversely affected. So the Society of Actuaries, a nonpartisan group, estimated that absent subsidies, so leaving the subsidies aside, the average cost of insurance in the individual market will go up 32%. Now, it depends. It depends on your state. It depends on your income level, because then the subsidies will kick in. But if you're like a single person who's, say, 30 years old and you're making $40,000 a year, so you're not eligible for the subsidies, your premiums are going to go up. So now that's not everybody. That's a slice of people. But there is going to be a constituency of people who benefit, like you said, Valerie, and there's going to be a constituency of people who are going to be upset. And they're going to be as a broader constituency of people who say, my premiums went up. I think it's Obamacare.
And I blame Obamacare, exactly. And that's, I think, the thing that they're worried about most politically is the idea that people don't like the healthcare system in this country, although they tend to like their individual insurance, and that once you pass the bill changing healthcare, you own politically everything that happens with healthcare in America, right?
Or governors, Republican governors, who know that it's bad politics for them to try to implement this effectively, and some even who have decided to implement, and then their Republican-controlled state legislatures say, don't implement and won't pass enabling legislation. When you have that kind of situation, that makes it harder.
How hard is this going to be? I mean, how much of a problem is this really? I mean, I know folks that work in the bureaucracy. I know civil servants who've been, I got to say, there are thousands of smart, dedicated, hardworking people in the federal government who are working like crazy to make this thing happen. And it isn't a trivial task that they're tasked.
The vast majority of people in the country who have health insurance, that insurance is now more secure and has better benefits. But for people who don't have health insurance, they're going to go into this new marketplace that's going to open in October. And I think that they're going to have, by and large, a good experience. The people that are making it hard are these governors and others who are working desperately to make that implementation rocket.
Very quickly, Avik, do you want to see the exchanges succeed, or do you want to see them fail?
I want to see the exchanges succeed. I don't think what state governors do, whether states implement them, has anything to do with it, because the federal exchange is a backstop. It basically does exactly the same things. This whole thing about whether governors implement the state-based exchanges or not is not an issue. And if you ask a lot of these states that have done it, they're regretting it. A lot of state exchange directors I've talked to, they say, I wish we had another year, because the deadlines are too quick right now. We need another year to get this going.
Avik Roy of the Manhattan Institute, Dr. Verily Arkush of the National Physicians Alliance, and Richard Kim of The Nation.